PTF and Nick Tamaro back with you on the In the Money Media YouTube channel and also the In the Money Players podcast. We're here today to talk about the Kentucky Derby, quite specifically what the prices of the various runners are going to be in this year's Kentucky Derby. Nick, a morning line maker, you have come up with a line for the Derby we're going to use as one of our data points. We'll also consult some international markets, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. First and foremost, how much did you enjoy the process of making this Kentucky Derby morning line? How difficult of a chore is it, just generally speaking?
You know, it's funny, Pete. The bigger races are easier. It's the 12 horse claiming 20,000 non-2 life that are hard.
Right. With horses from 4 different tracks coming
exactly
in,
right? Because you might be deciphering, including synthetic races.
Right.
You might be deciphering like months old form. You're trying to look at the pace scenario to make sure you don't get burned by the CAWs and all that jazz. So yeah, this actually is not that hard. I did use the anti-post as a bit of a guide. David Aragona had also put a line together for his Derby Watch stuff, so I looked at that as well. I was a little more on the anti-post side at the top of the market than David was. So yeah, it wasn't that hard. There are a number of horses, obviously, that are going to be 30, 50 in that range. So it's really just a matter of deciphering where they're going to be.
We've talked before about the differences between a value line for betting and a morning line. I'll let you briefly explain that because we got a lot of new people around here.
Yeah, I mean, a value line for betting is what price you think you should get, what price you think a horse should be. So, if you listen to any professional bettor, whether it's on Basin or on a podcast or anywhere else, I know the football guys especially that I listen to will talk extensively about, well, my model had it at 2, so at 3, it's a big play. So and things like that. What they're saying effectively in translating to racing parlance is that if they have a horse that they think should be 8 and the horse is going off 12, he's a big bet, right? Or if they have a horse that they think should be 8 and the horse is at 4, they're going to pass more than likely. I had somebody reply to me when I made a tweet about CAWs the other day about a horse being bet down to 2 to 5, and they're like, "You think CAW is a better horse at 4 to 5?" Yeah. If they think they should be 2 to 5, they're going to bet them at 4 to 5, right? I mean, and if you're talking about a real value line, if you think a horse should be 4 to 5 and he's 6 to 5, you're supposed to bet.
Bet of the year type stuff. Yeah. I mean,
you're supposed to bet. Now, unfortunately, when you lose, but you didn't lose because you bet a wrong price. You bet because you need to fix your methodology as to what gave you a 6 to 5 shot that didn't win.
Well, and also sometimes it can just be bad luck, of course. I mean, it's the coin's going to come up. You could give me 3 to 1 on a coin toss, and I could lose the coin toss. It wasn't a bad bet.
It wasn't a bad bet. No, exactly. And I think it's that, right? It's making sure that you're betting your opinion, you're handling it the right way. So yeah, that's basically my 45 seconds on a value line versus a morning line.
Exactly. Whereas the morning line being a guess of what the public's going to bet. And crucially, another crucial difference, to make money on a line, on your value line, you're going to want to price up all the possibilities to 100%. If you take the percentage chance implied of each horse, it's going to add up to 100. With a morning line, you get some leeway.
Yes. Yeah, you'll get another 25 to 30 points worth. Certain morning line makers were a little bit more liberal with that and will click past 130. Not me. You'll never see me with a line over 129. 129 is the absolute max for me, and I usually try to even stay below that. But yeah, we had a lot of guys around the country that were regularly in the 130s. And to be perfectly honest, Mike Battaglia made this line, I think, 135 last year. Mm-hmm. So it's not... There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not. It's an overly safe line that's meant to keep him from pricing a horse too high that ends up going off too low.
This line that you made, what did you put it at? Points.
This is 120. I believe this is 128.2.
Okay, so very much in the standard, and we'll just go through it by category. We'll start with the horses you made 50 to 1. We won't talk about every one. I'm just going to ask you a question about them as a group, and this is going to include some horses that are currently on the AEs. I'm thinking we've got Neo Equos, Render Judgment, Built, and Flying Mohawk at 50s. Are any of those more interesting to you than others? Is there a sneaky one in there that you price this way just because you think the public is going to bet them this way?
I mean, probably the horse that has the best chance of winning among those would be Built. but he doesn't have much more than just a puncher's chance, I would think. So, no, I mean, they look to me like total outsiders. Neo Equos and Render Judgment, as you alluded to, are AEs right now. They would need scratches to get in, which is still possible. Flying Mohawk has yet to run on dirt. I guess a little bit of an unknown there, but he's a 50 to 1 shot easily. So no real wagering interest for me in any of those.
We'll move on to your group of 30. Currently, Owen Almighty, Chunk of Gold, American Promise, and Admire Daytona. Chunk of Gold, one of the great stories of this year's Kentucky Derby, given his background, was very happy to get to talk to Ethan West for our Derby Monster Pod that you can find elsewhere on the YouTube channel about that one. I can't help the idea that I'm going to have some bet somewhere that sneaks in a little bit of Chunk of Gold. Where are you with these 30 to 1 shots as a group?
Yeah, he's the most interesting to get a piece of this by far, and really a horse that I would have probably liked to price lower than that. There is no option lower than 30, above 20. He would have been like a 25 if I could have. But this is a horse that was 10 to 1 and 43 to 1 in his last 2 starts. Now in a 20 horse field, it's the toughest race in the country. So he is a 30 to 1 shot, but he's a fun story and a horse that I think a lot of us will find ourselves rooting for to clunk up and get a share of it. He actually ran very well in the Louisiana Derby last time out. Didn't completely convince me that he wants to go an additional 16th of a mile, but he's definitely going to need a more patient ride and somebody to take him back a little bit more and let him make that one run, because he knows how to make up some ground, certainly in garbage time.
Owen Almighty, a horse that would be on my fade from the super high 5 type list. Just the back and forth of whether he was going to run alone makes me feel a little bit negative. Am I being too negative when it comes to the chances of an Owen Almighty?
No, you may not even be being negative enough, right? It's just all the signs are terrible. This reeks of we're people that are relatively new to the game. We've got a horse that qualified for the Derby, which means we're going to run, right. and it's more for their experience, the owner's experience, than the horse's experience, because there are some meaningful grade 1 races that would make this horse a stallion that are still out there. But, you can't blame them. They're obviously new to the game. They're wealthy. They want to experience this at the highest level.
It's hard. I mean, I could make an argument that the experience is worth it, but ultimately I would side on that would just be me, playing debate team. I think it's better to trust the people closest to the horse when it comes to this type of thing. You got a big cluster of horses around 20 to 1. I'm curious. I'm going to make you pick one that you like better than the rest between Tistastic, Final Gambit, Cold Battle, Publisher, Citizen Bull, and Grande.
Yeah, it would be one of the proven dirt deep closers. So some combo of Tistastic, Publisher, and Grande. I don't like Citizen Bull for a nickel. I don't see how anybody could. I've never thought highly of Citizen Bull, and he was completely exposed in the Santa Anita Derby, and really is just, he belongs in this race because he's a defending 2-year-old champion, but I don't really think he's moved forward much at 3, and he has a running style that just doesn't work here. I think everybody's going to, I actually would have had Tistastic a little bit lower, but I think everybody's going to read into that workout on Saturday where he really struggled to keep up with Publisher, and honestly, he never even passed Publisher. That's not the first time that's happened, though.
Right.
That has happened multiple times in the past. Tistastic is a bit of a lazy workhorse. Joel seemed to come off the track happy with what he did. Again, he's a horse I would have probably liked to price at 15, but I do think people might read into that a little bit. So Publisher, Tistastic, and Grande are probably the ones that I'd be most inclined to take at that 20 to 1 price. There's one of those 3 is going to go off lower than that. And one of the other 3 that I am not talking about is going to go off quite a bit higher. I originally had Final Gambit at 30, but then I realized, Final Gambit got a 90 buyer speed figure last time out, and apparently everybody's loved his training. So, and it is still Brad Cox. He's probably a horse I could have moved to 30, kept him at 20. Again, more of an outsider.
Yeah, these are judgment calls. You referenced the workouts. They do have an outsized effect on these markets. And we're going to have a little workout video at some point next week. Don't know exactly how we're going to get it done, but we're going to have an update from the grounds, from Churchill, where we can go over some of the horses who've impressed. Best way to make sure you keep on top of all our content, not just on the YouTube side, but also on the podcast side. Sign up for a free newsletter, inthemoneypodcast.com/email. Going to be so much info in there. And then if you really want to cover all the bases, make sure you check out the site on the regular inthemoneypodcast.com. And of course, you should already be subscribed to the In the Money Media YouTube channel. I have a couple more plugs to make, but let's do that after we talk about this pair of horses you have at 15-1. Two real X factors as far as I'm concerned. We've got Luxor Cafe. Hard to know what the crowd is going to do there. And then East Avenue, a horse that people in the past have liked to bet, showed, I suppose, that he was still a horse with at the least with his run last time at Keeneland. Where do you stand with these two? Are you interested? Are you not interested? 15-1 feels to me like you kind of can't decide the same way I can't decide.
Yeah, I mean, you're right in referring to both as X factors. I mean, they are definitely X factor type horses. East Avenue is a horse that I actually thought was going to get a little bit more money in the Bluegrass, really didn't, and actually ran a banger of a race to be second beaten a nose. It's just hard to envision him winning this race, right? And I feel like the public is ultimately going to come to that conclusion. And I think when I made Life is Good the third choice in the Breeders' Cup Classic in 2022, there were a lot of people that said, "Oh, he's clearly going to be the second choice." And I said, "Wait until you see these PPs and try and actually envision him winning this race." And there is no conceivable scenario where he can win. And I feel like East Avenue is a little bit in that category. I think people are going to think that Luxor Cafe can win because there's a lot of positive references to Forever Young, so there are people that are going to think, okay, it could happen. It's going to happen one of these days. This horse is not at Forever Young's level, but who knows how far off he is, right? I mean, he might not be that far off of it. So Morera coming over, I think, is interesting. People that are internationally inclined. The other thing I can tell you is he has taken a ton of money in every race.
Yes.
He's been favored since his debut. He's been bet down under even money 4 of his 6 starts. So the markets like this horse, and they priced him in the anti-post very clearly as the third choice.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Going to have a lot more on him in a whole bunch of places. Let's do one more horse, actually, before I thank our sponsors for this video. And I'm going to ask you about this next one. And I'm going to guess this was maybe the hardest line to make of any horse because he's currently on the outside looking in terms of the field. But if he gets in, I can argue he's the main threat to the favorite. I speak, of course, of Baeza. Tell me about the thought process going into this line and give me your evaluation of Baeza as a horse.
Ultimately, people are going to look at these PPs and they're going to say to themselves, why am I taking 3-1 on journalism when Baeza is 15-1? And he can't be that big a price. I mean, there is an argument that he could be the second choice in this race if he gets in, especially with Flavien Prat. And obviously, John Sheriff's garners a lot of support, rightfully so. This is a horse that's going to take a tremendous amount of money if he gets into this race. And I think a lot of people are really hoping that there are 2 defections between now and Saturday in order to get him in. At the very least, he'll end up on the AE list. And I hope John Sheriff's keeps him on the eastern part of the United States to run him in the Preakness if that happens, because he's very interesting. There's no denying it. I didn't think he was capable of the step forward that he showed in the Santa Anita Derby, but he ran very well in there, and getting a 101 buyer, looking like a progressive type for a trainer that's won this race and is very dangerous in general. Yeah, he's a horse that's going to garner a tremendous amount of support.
Got the Preakness future wager coming up. It's going to be sort of an interesting hedge if you love Baeza, but don't think he's going to get in the Derby. You're going to have that opportunity. You'll know by the time that pool closes for the Preakness future wager, you'll know if he's in the Derby or not. I think I'll get the details on this.
Oh, no, 100% you will. Yeah, because it closes. Doesn't it close on Derby Day?
Yeah, I think it closes on Derby Day after the Derby is run. It must, right?
No.
So
you definitely. Well, I think it closes actually like an hour before the Derby.
Oh, that would make more sense, actually. Yeah. But you'll know if he's in. So that's the sweet spot. One of the places you can bet that Preakness future wager, which will be widely available at whatever the ADW of your choice, but it would be Twin Spires. And Twin Spires, we've been loving working with them this year. If you go to twinspires.com and click on the tournaments tab, you can see the full slate of qualifiers and feeders heading to horse racing tournaments, new major, the Kentucky Derby Betting Challenge, $5,000 event happening, of course, on Derby Day. And you can buy your way in for $5,000, but why do that when you can win your way in? Go to twinspires.com, click on that tournaments tab for more information about that. Also, one last house plug. If you want even more info, In the Money Plus, we're going to have loads of additional Derby coverage, including some proprietary speed figure information, detailed analysis from the team, extra podcast coverage of every race on Oaks and Derby Day. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus, the place to go to find out about that. we're going to be talking about a lot of these horses in a lot of different formats. So we're not going to go through each of the ones you have at the top of the market, but I will ask you a couple of questions about this group, and we'll give those numbers. Baeza, by the way, 10 was the number Nick settled on. I'm not sure if I actually said that when we were talking about him before the break, but Tapan Street alone at 12-1. What made you decide on 12 rather than going as low as 10 or as high as 15 with him?
He's a tricky horse to price, Pete, because I don't know how much higher his price should be than Sovereignty. And the Antipost and David Aragona as well both had Sovereignty a clear second choice. So I understand. So I mean, the disparity in their odds in the Florida Derby was not that great. And Tapan Street really beat him on the square. So I'm hesitant to really make their prices too far apart. And I wonder, I guess the public maybe is going to really lock into that Sovereignty Churchill win, and they're going to like that. But I'm not completely sold that he's going to be bet all that much. There are other closers in the race that are interesting. There are other closers in the race that have run just as fast, if not faster. Mm-hmm. So I thought I could get Tapan Street down to 10. Tapan Street and Burnham Square to me were interchangeable.
Gotcha. Well, Burnham Square and Rodriguez, the two you have at 10, is some part of having Rodriguez as low as 10 related to who trains it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a Baffert Smith thing, 101 buyer, New York winner. So there's always going to be some support for it. And the thing is, Rodriguez is a horse that doesn't only have one fast race. He has two fast races.
Right.
Of course, you pick apart his form. You're going to say, well, he got beaten easily by Citizen Bolt. He got beaten easily by Journalism. Right. He's a need the lead type. He just happens to be one of 4 need the lead types in this race. So, and then, of course, with that thought process, I said to myself, well, aren't you supposed to upgrade more closers? And aren't you supposed to have more closers at shorter prices? Because the public is going to be able to handicap this race. And I wanted to be careful about that, but definitely did, including the horse that I think you're about to reference that I moved down to 8 as a second choice.
Yes, and that is Sandman. We've talked about this horse extensively. He has a PP cut I really feel like people are going to gravitate towards. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of 8-1 as a morning line price for him. On a value line point of view, this is one where I might have a wide discrepancy just because I think he might have the misfortune of being the third best closer at best. What are your thoughts on Sandman more from a handicapping point of view? And are you with me that maybe 8-1, which the public is going to make him, isn't going to necessarily represent value?
Look, I mean, he fits the race like a glove, right? He comes in off a huge thoroughgraph figure. He got a 1 last time. There's a ton of pace in here. Oaklawn has obviously been a popular route to the Derby. There's just a lot to like. Is he going to have to run better than he did on most occasions? Yes, but his last was good. Mm-hmm. And it was very complete in the sense that he took full advantage of the setup. Of course, they came home slow. He's a horse that's only going to be successful in races where they come home slow. But I would say that from pretty much every walk of life, so to speak, he's going to get real money and he's going to get real support. So it's sort of funny that if you look at both him and Burnham Square on the thoroughgraphs, they are almost identical. They have 2 4s and a 1 as 3-year-olds. And Burnham Square has 2 7s and a 10. Sandman has 2 4s and a 1 as a 3-year-old, and a 7, 8, 11, 10, and 15 as a 2-year-old. I mean, they're very similar horses, very similar running styles. I think Burnham Square is going to be a little less fancy. He's got a little less fancied. He's got a little less sort of attractive name, connections that don't really bet quite at the same level. So, I think that Sandman will get a good bit more money than him. That was why I priced him down to 8.
And what about the question from a value point of view? I mean, you seem to also be making the case that you think he's a serious contender who deserves to be that price. If I'm reading between the lines,
I'd have him 10 or 12-1 at most, right? He looks like I don't want to spend a bunch of money on a multi-race bet and not use him. I'll tell you that.
Gotcha. All right, I like it. Let's talk Sovereignty.
Kind of horse. That's the thing. This is usually the kind of horse that I say, oh, he's pokey, he's goofy, he's a typical tappet. He'll put in that Tacitus run around the turn and then flatten out, do something like that and then win the Belmont or something. But it feels like he may have just found the right spot.
Yeah. Let's talk Sovereignty a little bit more. This is a horse that I could see. Another one, I just find it very hard to make this line. I could see the public going borderline crazy for him if the buzz is right next week. And I could also see him he's not that different than some of these other horses we've been talking about and going the other direction. I like where you put him, but this is another one where, while I feel like 8 is the right line, a swing in either direction wouldn't really surprise me, because I think he's hard horse to price.
I mean, if somebody told me, oh, no, look, he should be 6, and these are the reasons why, or somebody walked up and said he should be 12, these are the reasons why, I'd probably tell him fine. Right. I don't, he's a hard horse for me to gauge, because I wanted him to run a little bit better last time, but I also understand that he didn't have to. And that's the hard thing to sort of rectify in one's mind. He's clearly talented enough to win. I just wish he had run a little bit faster, and he hasn't really run all that fast. So you start to dig into his PPs, and you naturally become you have the feeling that you're wanting a little bit more. Talking about the thoroughgraphs, he's run 2 straight 1s after a couple of 5s as a 2-year-old. So I don't want to give out all of Jerry Brown's numbers on here, but this is a horse who's definitely run fast enough on there and duplicated it. So, he's a horse that deserves plenty of support, and it's not going to surprise me if he wins.
Should point out that we have a lot of new people around here on the thoroughgraph scale, unlike the buyer scale or the time form scale. The lower, the better. So that one, off the top of my head, I don't have the conversion, and I don't have the conversion at the ready, but I think that's a high 90s type thing.
Yeah, it's about close to 100. Yeah, it's a good fit.
Let's talk about your decision to make Journalism the favorite at 7-2 on your line. He is a little bit shorter most places internationally, but not all. You're right in line with where some of the bookies have him. How did you ultimately land here? And my gut is I'd be supporting him at 7-2. From here, we're going to obviously have our final answers. We're going to have picks and official stuff as we get closer. But my gut is that's fair on a horse who on the buyer scale has run the fastest figures.
Yeah, I just don't know if he has it. I keep coming back to the fact that it takes a lot to get under 3-1 in the Derby.
Yes.
And I would rather make him 7-2 and let him go off 3.16 to 1 than, make him 3-1 and have him go off 3.16 to 1, because you cost yourself all those points making the line. Yeah. So in an effort to make an accurate line, I would be a little bit more liberal with him and moving him up to 7-2. Look, he's a deserving favorite, right? You start talking about sub 4-1 in the Derby. You're talking about a horse that looks to have a really strong hand, and he does look to have it. Doesn't really have the sexy rider, trainer, support behind him. Michael McCarthy obviously is outstanding.
Right, but just you're talking about in terms of the public and what they're going to.
He's not Bob Baffert, right? It's not vintage Wayne Lucas. It's not Chad Brown. Right. So not Brad Cox even at this stage of the game. So that was why I think people are gonna say, oh, this is not one of those horses I could bet against him. 3-1's too short. So I went with 7-2 for that reason. I think the anti-post I saw had 7-2. There were a lot of 3s, as you said. David made him 3 on his line. I could never in a million years make him less than 3. Less than 3 the sharpest. Very, 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 very hard to get to.
Yeah, 3 at the sharpest book. But again, they're betting real, these are people who are actually taking bets at these prices. So holding a favorite safe, probably not a crazy idea. And the public has different ways of betting. And you see weird pockets of value at the top of the market in the Derby, because typically the trend that we've seen is that you'll get horses. The long shots seem like they're never high enough now in the tote win market for the Derby. And that value has to go somewhere. And where it goes, who knows? We'll have a lot more content pointed just at that fact. Nick, you'll be back with us next week as well. Going to have a ton more from you. Check us out at all the usual places, and check out Nick on social media as well. Give him I know it's right up there on screen, but give him the handle for those listening.
Yeah, of course. At NTM1215, Interact, ready for Derby. Looking forward to it very much. Can't wait to be on the grounds.
It's going to be great, great fun. If you're on YouTube, click on another video. And if you are listening, we'll be back right after this.